Thank you for staying back and to want to walk the path to liberation. As Brother Jerry said, half of this congregation will walk in front, closer to liberation already. And in order to gain liberation, actually there's a lot of inspiration that we need. Dhamma cultivation requires a deeply seated inspiration. Dhamma is not something that is very worldly. In fact, it is unworldly. But because we live in a worldly existence, we are driven by ambitions, desires, sometimes not even our own ambitions. 政府安排, arranged by bosses, arranged by our companies, arranged by our organizations. It's not that we have that kind of ambition, but we are driven by it and driven along. So we are just in the current of things. Dhamma is said to be against the current. So in order to keep to the path of Dhamma until its final destination, we need a lot of inspiration. One of the most inspiring things that I've witnessed are those that went on pilgrimage. And after they come back from pilgrimage, if the pilgrimage were very well conducted, I wouldn't say well organized, because what do you need to organize on a pilgrimage? The passage, accommodation, the itinerary from one sacred place to another, and also the guide. So that can be very easily done. But a well-conducted pilgrimage is not just about the itinerary. It's not just about the time spent at each place. Sometimes it is very rushed, so it's not a very good arrangement. But also the guide must not only give us the knowledge or the history, but also the Dhamma. So the well-conducted pilgrimage is one of the most inspiring things that can keep many Buddhists on the path of cultivation. So I'm very glad that so many people have stayed back to join this session, which was requested by Brother Yu Tong. He came early in the year with us to India, representing Singapore. So I'd like to invite Brother Yu Tong to talk about his experience. And he has prepared all these slides, all these nice videos, which I don't know what pictures are there. I haven't seen it myself. So best if the author talks about his experience. And I'm around if there's any need. If you want to ask questions, please ask Yu Tong. So if any need, then I will also give my opinions, right? So I pass to Brother Yu Tong with humility.
Thank you, Brother Tan. Thank you. Good afternoon, brother and sister. Okay, my journey for the pilgrimage, I guess, started in July 2013. That was about 2.5 years ago. At that time, Brother Tan came to Singapore for the Buddhist conference, and he told me that he intended to go to India and do a documentary. And then, out of ignorance, just happily I say, Brother Tan, do you think I can go with you? And he looked into me and said, you seriously want to go? I said, yeah, why not? Of course, I heard that you are the best tour guide. Well, this is what the Nalanda told me, you know. For Brother Tan himself, he has gone to India for more than 10 times, maybe 11, 12 times to India, right? And he also shared a lot of story about India. So he said, okay, he will check with the organizer, and then he get back the answer, said, yes, you can go. The plan was to go in January 2014. So for me, I thought, okay, just go happily with him, you know. But then certain things happened. The trip has to postpone for another 1 year. So I said, wow, got to wait for 1 more year, long wait. So then I think, hey, maybe this is a good opportunity while waiting to go into India. Let me do a bit of self-study, a lot of other research. At least when I go there, I'm not like Sotong when he say anything I don't understand. So at least when he said something, I could, okay, this is what happened in India. This is what happened, what Buddha say this in this particular place. So I spent about 1 year doing my own research study. But then the day came in January 2015, just beginning of this year. I went to Brother Tan. Again, it's another eye-opening for me again. Whatever that I learned from a text, whatever that I learned is never enough. And when you go on the spot, it's so inspiring, especially with Brother Tan. He's so knowledgeable. He can even explain to you this brick, this stone, and down to the detail of this brick is from which period, this stone is from which period. So I was so inspired, and then of course I come back, I do a lot more research. That trip, I think there's only about 14, 15 of us who went there. There are 2 videographers, professional videographer, 2 photographer, 2 videographer, and 1 helicamgrapher that photograph all this. I think the documentary is going to be out probably in another 6 months to maybe a year. Initially, they thought it's a very easy job to be done. They can do it within like 3 months, 4 months. But as they start going to do it more and more, they realize that there are a lot more things. So similarly, as I go on and do a lot more research on my own, I find that there is a lot of things that's inadequate. And of course, I did ask Brother Tan permission, say, do you think I can lead the BF, the Singaporean, for a pilgrimage? Maybe not this year, maybe next year, right? The reason why I requested next year, December, is because so that we don't just go there as a tourist, right? Go there, look, see. A stone is a stone, a brick is a brick to most of us. But if you understand the history, the historical background, then things will come alive. When you go there, you can literally picture that, see the scene that's happened, that Buddha is giving a discourse or dispensation at that particular spot. And that kind of voices actually echo in your mind, right? So I requested Brother Tan and said, okay, then maybe what we could do is that we can have a course conducted, maybe like a 10-session course, and then come here and then we share what we have. Those who have been there before can also share their own experience. So a little bit of history, a little bit of introduction to the place. So when we go there, we can do a lot more meditation and maybe a lot more Dhamma talk rather than Brother Tan have to explain right on the ground, right? So I thought maybe it's a good time to share, and then we'll work with BF to see when it's a good date with Brother Tan together so as well, how many people going there. So I encourage all of you who have not been there before, or who have even been there before, maybe take this opportunity to further our spiritual path, right? So the title of the talk today is called The Footstep of the Buddha, right? So many times a lot of people thought India, Buddha from India, so the whole of India. But in actual fact, Buddha area of operation is really focused in the northeast of India, somewhere near to the Nepal, part of Nepal. We all know that he was born in Nepal. So when you go to Nepal, the Nepalese are very, very proud. They say, oh, Buddha is the Nepalese, not an Indian. So when they say, Buddha is born in India, no. Buddha is not an Indian, Buddha is a Nepalese. This is what they will tell you when you talk to a Nepalese, right? So they're very proud that, oh, Buddha was born in Nepal, is a Nepalese. So basically, Buddha mode of operation is in the northeast. He did go a bit further north, but most of the time he spent in this area, right? We all know that he's born in Lumbini, got enlightened in Gaya, first sermon in Sarnath, and then of course he passed away, Parinirvana, in Kusinara, right? And a lot of times he spent in Savatthi and Rajagaha. These are the 2 very rich places. He delivered a lot of discourse in Savatthi, right? I think he spent almost his last 20, 25 years in Savatthi. But not forgetting that he also spent a lot of number of years in Rajagaha, right? And then of course the world famous Nalanda, right? And Visali also as well. It's some places that he loved a lot. Right? So I'll share with you some of the photographs that was being taken there. And okay, so basically for the pilgrimage trip, it's a circuit, right? The last time we did was that we landed in Varanasi and we do a circuit round to Bodh Gaya, right? We cannot go the places in sequence, but rather not in the sequence of his birth and all this, because they are all not well connected, but rather you go in a circuit to save time because it's only like 14 weeks. So either people will do a circuit from Gaya all the way to Sarnath. Okay, just to let you know the distance, roughly from here, from let's say Rajagaha, all the way to Savatthi, is about 500 over km. This is about the distance in this direction here, right? This is about direction, probably about the size of, smaller than the size of West Malaysia. Okay, roughly about there. Okay, so in those days, Buddha walked. You know, there's no Mercedes, no Rolls-Royce, no BMW. Right? His only modes of transport is walking. Right? So if you will go to pilgrimage, most likely you will land in Gaya and then up in to north to Rajagaha. Rajagaha is of all the places, I love Rajagaha the most. Later I explain why. Okay. Then of course you go further up to Pragna, and then Visali, and then Kusinara, his birthplace. You have to cross through the border to from India to Nepal, and then from Nepal back to India, and then to Savatthi, and then down to Sarnath. Okay, the whole journey takes about for normal pilgrimage is about 12 to 14 days. For the pilgrimage trip that I went with Brother Tan, is double the dosage. We went there for about 28 days. So we spent a lot of times because the crew need to take a lot of photograph, and we do it slowly as well, right? So why we need to do a lot of study? You can see that this is Bodh Gaya, right? The Mahabodhi temple, Bodh Gaya. You can see that this is what we will see today, right? This is what we will see today. But when it was first discovered by the British or by the Buddhists that went there in the 18th, 19th century, this is what they see. You see? So there are a lot of history there. A lot of times we just go there, we only appreciate the beauty of this. We never appreciate what actually transformed from this to this here. Right? So it's very important to say, okay, what was the background? Why we have today this Mahabodhi temple? What is the reason why Buddhism was born in India, has its golden age, right, in India, and from India spread to all over the world. But how did Buddhism actually landed in such stage? Right? It's also something very interesting for us to know also as well. So we learn about anicca. Even Buddhism itself in India has to undergo decline and almost disappear in India. And of course, in today, the population of Buddhists in India is less than 1%. And that's how it landed in this stage. And of course, how it transformed from this stage to this stage also because of a lot of Buddhists from all over the world make an effort to revive Buddhism in India. Okay, so this is Bodh Gaya. Now, the Mahabodhi temple is a very, very beautiful temple, right? You can see after all the restoration, there are a lot of very nice, beautiful, and every day people come in to do their offering, the flowers. You just sit there and observe. There are a lot of things to observe. Just sit there quietly and observe, right? So beautiful, okay. And because here I took a picture of the monk. They came in about 3 or 4 of them. This Thai, probably foreign monk, Amor monk. They told us that they came here to do a retreat. So every day morning they come there and sit, and to the end of the morning, about 5, 6 o'clock, they come and sit until about 9 o'clock when the temple is closed. About 3, 4 of them just sit there, meditate for their pilgrimage or for their retreat, they call it, right? And of course, you can also see a lot of offering on the table as well, right? And this is the Bodhi tree, right? Of course, this is not the original Bodhi tree that Buddha sat under. It was destroyed a couple of times, and then this was sapling from the original Bodhi tree. Right? You can see a lot of people doing the offerings. So it's a very nice place, a lot of place to contemplate, also as well. Okay. Next, we move on to, okay, there are still a lot of places in Bodh Gaya, but just doing a bit of sharing only, that's all. We also go to Bodh, which is the place where Buddha practiced his ascetic for about 6 years. Right. We also go to Sujato village, the Narajaran river, and also the Gaya, whereby he converted the Kasapa brother. So there are a lot of story itself in Bodh Gaya, but I just bring up only a part of it, right? And we can learn more. Let's say in next year when we run the course, there are a lot more stories to tell about what's so significant about those places. What's the happening? What's the history? What did Buddha do in those places, right? So this is another further north of Bodh Gaya, maybe about 50 kilometers away from North Bodh Gaya, is Rajagaha. Okay, Rajagaha in Chinese is called Wang Se Chen. Right? I think those of you who read Chinese sutta, you know about Wang Se Chen. Rajagaha was a city, a capital city of Magadha back in Buddha's day. And in Magadha, that is a very vibrant, it's probably like Singapore, something like Singapore, whereby a lot of religion teachers actually congregate in Rajagaha. Okay, so you read about all his meditation teacher, his first two meditation teacher, live somewhere near Rajagaha. Right. So first thing that Buddha renounced, the first place that he went to is Rajagaha to seek for meditation teacher or teacher that can teach him the path to enlightenment. Right. So if you go to India from the north, because we travel from the north onwards, other than the Mount Everest mountain that you see, most of the places you see in India, in all parts of India, are flat land, flat all the way, until you reach Rajagaha. Then you see a little bit of mountains, right? Some mountains, not that tall, maybe the height of maybe Bukit Timah Hill, right? It's quite easy for us to climb up to the top, maybe about an hour to 45 minutes to reach the top, so it's not that difficult, right? So why Rajagaha? Because there are a lot of mountains there. Okay, it's surrounded by 5 mountains. So, holy men love to go to stay in the mountain for some reasons, right? We always see a lot of monastery built in mountains. Okay, this is Satapani cave. This is where the Buddha also stayed there quite frequently, right? One of his favorite place. At the foot of Satapani, there is a hot spring. So if you read in the sutta that, Buddha just finished his bath in the hot spring, and you actually literally find that, that was the place that Buddha actually took his bath in the hot spring, at the foot of Satapani cave. Right? Satapani cave is also very important, one of the very important places, is because that was the first Buddhist council that was held there. 500 Arahant congregate in that spot and recite the Vinaya and the Sutta. And this is why the reason today we are able to read the Sutta and the Vinaya, because of that particular event that happened. So when you go there, you go inside the cave, you sit there quiet, you feel somehow some kind of emotion actually come to you. So, you're so thankful that that event actually happened. If not because of that event, the teaching of Buddha would be lost. Right. So this is how beautiful the place is. This is on the way up to the Satapani cave, right? The sunrise. This is actually the sunrise. Okay, you can see that it's very mountainous. Okay, and of course our most respected brother Tan here and the photographer. We climb up all the way. You can see that this is the wall. This is the ancient wall, the old ancient wall that built by King Ajatasattu, right? So basically, Rajagaha is surrounded by mountains, 5 mountains. So what he did was that he just built a wall to protect his city. Because in the ancient day, they also have war with some of the neighboring kingdoms as well, right? So he built this wall, and we climb all the way up. So this is one of the passes, and we just climb all the way up, and of course, we are so happy that we are right at top. And once you get at the top, you can see almost everything inside. Okay, and this is the very famous vulture pig in Rajagaha. Right, this is one of the old ancient temple that nothing left but just left with the foundation. Okay, the building has been destroyed but left with the foundation. And this is one of the view that we see in vulture pig. Okay, vulture pig. I think somehow people like to show this photograph. They say that this one look like a vulture, but I don't have that imagination, so I'm not sure. Okay, yeah. So the next place that we visited was Nalanda. Nalanda is about 15 kilometers north of Rajagaha. Okay, anybody know why Nalanda is so famous? Not because Brother Tan was from Nalanda. Okay, Nalanda was the birthplace of Venerable Sariputta. He came from that particular village, and also later on in the 4th century, they built the Nalanda Mahavihara, which is the famous, the first university in the world, first Buddhist university in the world. It was the first, but it was destroyed in about 1200, the year 1200. Right, and this particular one is the Sariputta Stupa that can be found. Okay, so you go there, it's a very big compound. It's a very, very big compound. This is one of the things that you'll see. Not all, and they also have excavated quite a lot of the monastery. There are, I think, about 7, 8, 9 or 10 monastery there, each individual monastery. And each of the monastery, they have rooms and the cell. And I think if you read at the peak, there's about 10,000 people who stay in that monastery. This is how big the monastery is. It's not only a monastery, but it's also an educational institute. And it's very difficult to get into Nalanda University at that times. More difficult in getting into like NUS, much more difficult. Right? The entry criteria is very, very tough. Okay. Before you go in, I think that you need to pass certain tests whereby there's a guard at the door will ask you questions and all these things. Oral exam basically to test you how well versed you are. Only when you clear the guard at the door, then you're allowed to admit into the university. So why is it the case so difficult? Because everybody want to go there, because that is the learning center, Buddhist learning center at that times, in the 5th, 6th, 7th century, right? One of the very famous monks that you probably heard of is Xuan Zhang from China. He traveled all the way from China, right, just to go there and learn the Dhamma, right? Thanks to all these monks also as well, they make aspiration to go there, wanting to learn the Dhamma and bring the Dhamma back to their home. So a lot of all these great men, great monks, and because of them, we are able to listen to the Dhamma, we are able to practice the Dhamma also. Okay? And because he have contributed a lot in this area, they built a Xuan Zhang Memorial Hall in Nalanda itself. Okay? Okay, then next we head to further north in Visali. You can see this is what happened here. This is a remain of stupa. This is the base of the stupa, right? So when they excavate this part of the stupa, they found some relics cascade. But they remove it and then they put it in the Prajna Museum, right? So we are very fortunate that we can go into the museum and pay respect to the remains of the Buddha, right? This is probably very authentic. So a lot of people say relics of Buddha. Sometimes they have a lot of exhibition, relics of Buddha. So I was asking, can't remember, I think I was asking Brother Tan, I say, how come there's so many relics, you know? And I think he mentioned that, if you add up all the relics, Buddha relics in the world, you probably can form a mountain. Okay? So that is the amount of people claim that those are relics. But for this one, it's very authentic because it's actually from one of the original site. Okay, when we know that when Buddha passed away, after his body was cremated, his body, his remain was divided into 8 different portions. Right, this is one of the original 8 portions, and they built a stupa. So this is the mock-up stupa. It's show how is it, and this is, we don't get to see the relics inside, but this is the case, the stone case, that hold the relics. Okay. So from Visali to Pragna Visali, then we go to Kesia Stupa. Okay. This is one of the world largest, I think, Bharatan, correct me if I'm wrong, yeah, world largest stupa today. This is how we take from far. And you can see that it's only partially excavated, not fully yet. So when you go there, one of the very exciting things is that you can see that the archaeology today are still digging, and there's still a lot of things that they have not dug up yet. Right, this is the place, one of the place. Well, we are not sure where the Kalama live, but we know that the Kalama actually stays somewhere nearby, right? The Kalama Sutta could have preached in this particular location, but we are not sure, but somewhere near that location. Okay, so this is what I mean. You can see that there's still a lot of, they have not fully excavated the whole thing yet. They're just slowly doing it bit by bit, partially because of limited time, because 1 year they can only work like 3-4 months, right? Because the rainy season too wet, the hot season too hot. The winter season is where the so-called archaeologists, a lot of these archaeologists are Westerner. They go there 3-4 months in a year to do some excavation work, and then they come back again. And then of course they need funding also as well. Sometimes they run out of funds, so they cannot come. Right, so this is what happened. You can see a lot of excavation. You can see a little bit of bricks still sticking up. Okay, and of course after that you will go to these places, the Paridibana temple in Kusinara. Right. So this is the temple itself. This is a temple, and inside the temple you will see a reclined Buddha inside there. Okay, this is the temple. Okay, and behind the temple they built a stupa. Okay, it's also quite a big place also. So beside this place, we also visited the cremations, the Buddha cremation site. The stupa, this is also one of the stupa area. Right, you can see it doesn't really look like a stupa anymore. It doesn't look like a very nice stupa because over the years, over the time, lack of maintenance, things have collapsed. Right. And over there you can also see a lot of devotees, right? And of course, not only just stupa and all the places that we visit, sometimes we see a lot of the children very happy with us, wanting to take photograph. The children love to take photograph with us. For some reason, they love to take photograph. Everywhere you go, the children photo, you know. And of course, they're so happy, you know. And this, beside that, there's also beautiful sunset. The place is very beautiful, a lot of beautiful sunset. Some of it even do jump shot, you know. So we have some fun also, not only just visit the places. So I can recall almost every other day or something like that, I get to see the sunset or the sunrise. Very beautiful on the way traveling sometimes. Okay. And then we moved into Nepal. Nepal, this is where the Nepalese claim that the Buddha are Nepalese, not Indian. Okay, this is the Maya Devi temple, right? So, of course, according to legend, Buddha's mother actually take a bath, right, before Buddha was born. So, okay, and we can't really take any photograph inside there. These are places, certain places we go, we cannot take photograph. So we can't really show you what is inside. Okay, and you can see that this one here, there is a Ashoka pillar also on the side here. Okay, a lot of, why is it mentioned that Ashoka pillar is because a lot of places, like, you know, Buddhism has disappeared from India for about 700 years, almost disappeared, right? So how do the archaeology or even scientists able to identify a lot of these sites? It's a lot because of this great man, Ashoka. He was the emperor about 200 years, 150 to 200 years after Buddha. And he was a Buddhist, and he went around, and then he went down to pilgrimage site and started to erect a lot of this Asoka pillar. And the pillar, about 2,300 years, still standing. This one's still standing tall, right? Some of them have broken into pieces, but this one's still standing tall. So with that, the archaeology can actually identify that, oh, this is the place. Okay. Okay, then of course next we move back to Sarnath. So with Brother Tan, one thing good is that he can actually explain, the difference between these two Buddha images. When was the period? When was it built? How was it so different? So a lot of things to learn, because over there the guide sometimes they will even tell you the wrong things, or even sometimes they put out a little bit of a sign, even tell you the wrong thing also as well. So these two are Buddha images. So you can see that over the years, few hundred years, in different regions, the Buddha image look very, very differently. Okay. So this is they found this in Sarnath. This is the similar, or exactly the same Buddha image that we have here. Right. This is made in bronze. That one is made in sandstone. Okay. You can see exactly the same. But no matter what, it cannot compare to the original serenity of the Buddha image. Okay, this is the Sarnath Museum. And of course, in the Sarnath Museum, this is what you can find. The crown of the Asoka pillar. So this is one of the pillar that, this is what they put on top of the Asoka pillar. And something surprised me was that this is made of marble, and up to today, the polishing up to today is still shining. It's still shining. It's still in a lot of nice condition. So below the pillar, you can see the four animals: the lion, the elephant, the bull, and the horse. I think, yeah. So there are four animals just below here, right? And then of course you can see the chakra. The wheel. Okay, so it's so beautiful done. I think you saw those those who went to Nalanda saw a half a sized replica of it. But when you see the original one, it's so beautiful. I took a lot of pictures of this. Okay, and of course we go to the excavation site. This is the Dhammic Stupa, one of the tallest, right? And of course, this Asoka pillar has been broken into pieces. So just now you see the lion crown, the lion capital, is actually on top of this. And there are some inscriptions. So it took a while for the scientists or the archaeologists to decipher it. So finally they managed to decipher it, and they are able to explain where this pillar come from. Okay, so this is where the Buddha preached the second sermon, the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta, or the Sutta on emptiness. And then this is the Dhamma Rajagaha Stupa. You can see just now the stupa is still standing tall, but this one, what it left behind is just nothing but the base. Okay, so over the years, a lot of all this site has been destroyed. In this particular case, the ruler actually took out the bricks and used it for building materials, marketplace, the building material for marketplace in Sarnath. So imagine that people who are not aware of it, or people who is not Buddhist, they actually took out all these very important monuments from a Buddhist and built other things. So this is what you see in India also as well. A lot of things are being built on top of Buddhist. There's even a stupa that they built something on top of a stupa, or sometimes they build a buried ground, tombs, so that Buddhists now, you cannot really touch those areas because it's considered as holy to the Muslim, right? So there are a lot of things to see. Not only just see the bricks and wall, but you also see the state. And sometimes also remind us that if you don't practice well, the Dhamma will be lost. And when Dhamma is lost, this is what happened. This is physically what happened. But the Dhamma, this is also one way to remind us that Dhamma can be lost if we do not practice, we don't walk the path as well. Okay. What's so significant about this place? This is the spot that considered to be the first preaching of the Buddha, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. This is where he teach to the 5 monks. Okay, that's the first time where the world heard the Dhamma. Okay, and of course I did mention that there are some monastery, a lot of monastery. These are cell of one of the monastery. So the building has collapsed, but left with the bricks, the foundation. Okay, so based on that foundation, scientists estimate that this is probably a 3-4 story building at that times. Okay, so that was the height of Buddhism in India in those days. But what we left today is something like this in India. Okay, so that actually served as a very good reminder for me that we do not know whether, like Brother Tan said, I may come back next life again, but I'm not sure whether next life there'll be Dhamma for me to learn or not. So I have to practice well this life, learn as much as possible, right? So this is my, for personally, this is my biggest gain. Thank you very much, brother, sister. Thank you. Brother? Oh, Brother is more knowledgeable to me, so I'll pass the questions back to him. So Brother has, we have requested Brother to lead a pilgrimage in 2016 December. The date has not been fixed yet, right? I think there'll be limited places, about 30 of us. And I told him that, yeah, maybe before we go to pilgrimage, the prerequisite is that you have to go through a course, okay? Because sorry? I see, sister, just now you say, if I really need to know, 聽幾拜了, 聽14拜了, my God, 聽1拜對喎. So sometimes, a lot of times we think that we say that, oh, I really know already, you know. Just like I mentioned earlier on, before I went, I do a lot of research. Before I go, I thought, I really know already, you know. But then, every time I go there, something different. I open my eyes again. And then I got all the recordings of Brother Tan sharing, and as I listened to them again, oh, how come I didn't pick up this? Oh, how come I didn't know about this? And many times I learned, I thought I know already, but a lot of times I don't know. So it's more like sharing. The other reason is that because we want to prevent people say take this as a shopping trip or a tour, you know, tour. We try to discourage tourists. We want to prepare ourselves mentally. So because this is the holy site we want to go to, so we want to prepare ourselves spiritually so we can come together, practice together, meditation, a little bit of this, so that when you go there, there is a certain bond that everybody know everybody well, and when you go there, it's more like a community to practice the Dhamma, to walk the path. So that kind of idea is also not just learning the knowledge itself, but the friendship, the company. So that was the intention behind it. And then this will be the so-called the field trip for us to learn more. And then of course when you go on the ground, we walk the ground, there are a lot more things we can discover, we can see for ourselves. And when we come back, when we reflect back, a lot of things also for us to learn. Brother Tan, maybe you want to add something? Yeah. Q&A, any questions? Yeah. So the detail will be announced later, the cost will be detailed later. Basically, maybe a little bit of cost, I'm planning the cost material. So first thing is basically the history of Buddhism in India. Right? Just now I did mention that when you look at the Mahabodhi temple, sorry? you see, this is how, when we go there, this is what we see. But like I say, we did not see what actually happened before. We don't get to see what was it before, right? So this is, we can realize that when we do a lot of research work, this is what it was when it was discovered, right? How sad the state was. It was, and then we also learn about why Buddhism has declined to this state. So when you start to read a lot of literature, a lot of books or some article written by scholars, they have different. A lot of people say that, oh, because the Muslim came in and that's why Buddhism was destroyed. But actually, if you read a lot more, you realize that Buddhism was in a very solid state even before Muslim came in. This is one of the factors, but there are other factors as well. Right? Even Xuanzang record when he went to India in about 7th century, he recorded that in certain states, in certain area, Buddhism was in a very solid state at that time. Right? So, any questions? Any more further questions?
Okay, maybe I want to know. I was told that the Naga pond is not at the actual place of at the Bodhi temple. So because I went there, then the guide from there bring us to another place. So did you all go there? Can you show us the place?
Yeah, when you go to Mahabodhi temple, actually there's a sign showing you that, oh, first week Buddha spent here, second week Buddha spent here, third week Buddha spent here. So the Naga pond that she was mentioning was, I think, the 5th week or the 3rd week, whereby it was a very heavy downpour that's flooded, and then the Naga king actually coiled around Buddha. So you see if you see a statue of snake with 5 heads and then coiled around Buddha, this is what she was mentioning. So you're mentioning that whether that place was it in Gaya itself, near the Bodhi temple itself or somewhere else. Honestly, yes, I like the expert.
Okay, I'd like to thank Brother Yutong for the sharing and also all these slides. And before I continue, I'd just like to answer Sister's question. The Buddha gained enlightenment at a place we call Bodh Gaya today. But there is no mention of Bodh Gaya anywhere in the Pali or Sanskrit canons. For the simple reason that Bodh Gaya is the modern name given by the British about 200 years ago. The Buddha gained enlightenment at a place called Uruvela. Uruvela means silvery whitish sand. That was the bank of a special river called Naranjara. Naranjara river, Nilang means blue. Blue and a silvery sandbank in the evening is very, very attractive. Today also it looks very attractive. So around that area, the Buddha gained enlightenment, spent his first 7 weeks before traveling to Sarnath. So the complex that today is Mahabodhi temple does not contain all 7 spots where the Buddha spent his 7 weeks. The whole area, about 3.5 square kilometers, that is Uruvela, and the pond has long disappeared. Yeah. That is also disputable because it wasn't a Naga Konda. Konda means a pond. That place was called Muchalinda Rukha. In Pali, it means the Muchalinda tree. So it wasn't the legend, the Naga king by the name of Muchalinda that provided shelter for the Buddha. It was the tree Muchalinda. It's a very common tree in India. Muchalinda tree that provided the shelter. Yeah. Now, this is the reason why we must go on a pilgrimage to India. It's actually not to know about the history of Buddhism there. Yeah. That is very easy. Yeah. although if we go to India, the guides will usually tell us what is not history, what is not factual, quite fictitious, and also legend. In India, they don't regard history with much importance. A lot of things are about legend. The more legendary, the better. Yeah? So Buddhist history suffered the same treatment as the rest of Indian antiquity. However, when we go there, what is important is the discovery of the teachings of the Buddha. And that is why at Nalanda we call the pilgrimage a pilgrimage. It is not a pilgrimage tour, but a pilgrimage. In Pali we call it Dhamma yatra. Yatra means a trip, a special trip taken in order for us to discover. To discover what? To discover Dhamma. So that is the Dhamma yatra. By going to a place, we say the Buddha was here. And how did he struggle? What was he struggling with? What did he practice? What methods did he apply? What did he discover? What was his realization? All these should be made clear at every stage. So it's about the Dhamma that we discover. When I first went to India, also following another group, they brought us on 13 days, so many places. Those days, the journey was very long. Today we have highways and good hotels and good restaurants. Those days, you pack food, you stop the bus, you have it by the roadside, and then, of course, there were no toilets in India at that time. Male to the left, female to the right. Monks behind the bus. It's quite tough. So 11-hour journeys, 10-hour journeys, arrive at the place, spend 45 minutes only. Just go there, okay, kin, quickly go, and then go around, worship, chanting, get on the bus and so on. So that was pilgrimage. It's actually nothing, We felt happy nonetheless, because this is the exact spot the Buddha walked. He walked this direction, down this riverbank. When you are there, you feel very, very different. You are connected with the land. Mother India, we call it. So this is the special feeling that can arise in us. We call it an inspired feeling. Something that wells from within. Sometimes it can be insightful as well. For example, when you're there, because of the special setting, because of our presence there, because of the air, the environment, and the visual cues, when the Dhamma is being preached, it sounds very different. You hear something you have never heard before. Anububesu tesu dhammesu. This Dhamma that I have heard many times in BF. So many people come and tell Four Noble Truths. But when we are there exactly at that place, when we hear what is the truth of dukkha, jati pi dukkha, jara pi dukkha, vyadi pi dukkha, maranang pi dukkhang, immediately feel, so happy. So every time when we go to India, at every place, sure people shed tears of joy. Some people, every place also. We have a technical term for that. In Hokkien, it's called hampao. Every place also. So the next time we go down the bus, we bring tissue, we put it in front. So every time it's this is how deeply some people may feel when we are in Mother India. Okay? So the whole concept of going on a pilgrimage is not go there, I've done my duty, I come back, I'm a Haji now. No. It's like that. It's not the Hajj. It's not kewajiban. It's not something that you need to do in your life. But it is something that you must want to do in your life. You must will. You have the health, you have the opportunity to at least go once to experience the sangvega, that kind of sense of urgency and happiness we can experience in the holy sites. The site itself contrary to what people believe. Some people, they go there as if they are a meter. They go there and say, oh, I feel the energy here. See, my toes and my everything is tingling. Oh, very good. They may have the special ability. But these places are actually quite mundane. When you go there, it's ruins. You go there, the stupa is broken. The pillar is broken. There's nothing left of Buddhist India. Buddhism disappeared from India for 900 years. Ruin, nothing. But at the height of its glory, about 1,000 over years ago, half of the world's population were Buddhist. You just take in India, the majority of Indians were Buddhist. You just take in China, and half of the world's population were Buddhist. And almost 80% of Southeast Asia is Buddhist. I shared this with our Malaysian friends. They were shocked last month. I was there in the north giving a seminar. I said, Buddhism went from India, some to the north, some to the south, some came to Southeast Asia. Buddhism went into China in the late Han dynasty. The first dynasty was Qin, and that started in 221 BC, before Christ. After Qin, it was a very short-lived dynasty. It was the glorious Han dynasty. And in the middle of Han dynasty, Buddhism came in to Chang'an and Luoyang through Central Asia. But 130 years before Buddhism reached China, Buddhism arrived in Malaya, in Kedah. And we have a stupa to show for that. Carbon dated, and also with many dating, devices, dating back to the 3rd century before Christ. So Buddhism had spread and was the majority religion of many people throughout Asia. And everywhere you go, there were Buddhist monasteries, Buddhist monks of many, many sects, many, many traditions. And those days, if you go to India, you cannot tell the difference just by looking at the monks wearing their robes. Who is Mahayana, who is Hinayana? Today we don't have Hinayana, we only have Theravada, which is a new school. So, when you look at all those monks, you cannot tell what school they belong. Today you can. When you look at the Chinese monk, this is Mahayana. When you look at the Tibetan, then this is a Mahayana, Vajrayana monk. When you look at the Thai monk or Sri Lankan monk, this is Theravada. But those days, people like Xuan Zhang, who came from China to India, they have to ask, what school do you belong to? Oh, I belong to Samitiya school. I belong to Dharmaguptaka. I belong to Mahasangika. I belong to Stavativarin. Then only they know, by the robes, by the external looks of the temples and the stupas and the Buddha images, Xuan Zhang couldn't tell. So that was how similar it looked like. So this is wonderful discovery when we are in India. So we know a little bit of history, we know a little bit of geography, we can experience traveling along the pathway that the Buddha took, and see the vast expanse of India. And a very important thing, to see that part of India which the Buddha saw. Because there are certain parts of India, in Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, that has not changed in 3,000 years. But India is fast changing now. If you go another 5 years, it's like going to China today. You don't see China as it was. It's changing, rapidly modernizing, too fast. Those days, I remember a journey of 10 hours, 11 hours. Today in India, it took only 3.5 hours. So the suffering is gone. Yeah. To many, this is a good thing. Oh, no suffering, go there. Those days, hotels, no good hotels. You probably abstain from bathing. Yeah. Some abstain from sleeping on the bed. It's just inhospitable. Today, very comfortable, aircon, and it doesn't go on. They have generators. Those days, electricity only on for 6 hours a day. Now, they have generators even if the electricity is cut off. Buses are comfortable. Food is good. You don't suffer horrible pain and disease and discomfort anymore nowadays. So the suffering is gone, but along with the suffering, a lot of opportunities for insight is gone. When you go there and fall sick, for example, 13 times to India, only 3 times I escaped not being sick. 10 times very, very sick because of the long period I spent in India. And once very serious, almost hospitalized in India. You know, that was truly insightful. When you're there and say, I am subject to sickness. I am not free from sickness. I am subject to death. I am not free from death. It gives you special insight on Dhamma. That's wonderful. You know, you won't think of complaining. No electricity, no hot water, no Chinese food, yeah, no highways, no toilets. You won't think of any of those things. When you're there, you're in tune with spirituality. And this is what makes pilgrimages pilgrimages. Otherwise, we better go on a trip to Europe. No. We go to India not to tour India. We go on a pilgrimage in order to discover the Dhamma. If we come back, oh, I've been to Gaya, I worship there under Bodhi tree, very shady, Jinsong. Then we gain nothing. Here, botanical garden also song. Yeah. We gain nothing. So we must go with the right company. Yeah, we must go with the right, what you call Kalyanamita. Yeah. So in Nalanda, very popular. We don't do pilgrimages very often. Once every 2 years. But every time when we open the offer up, 300-400 people wants to sign up. Only 30 can go. So this is how many people cherish the opportunity. Many people go there, they don't get that kind of feeling. They don't get that kind of teaching. So on a good pilgrimage, you have to get teaching, a lot of sharing every day, yeah? And we have to see ourselves growing, yeah? Just now we mentioned, if we already know, then why must we go? But knowing is only one aspect of growing, correct or not? Knowing depends on what we know also, right? So there are a lot of other things which we need to experience, the insights, the difficulties, the challenges, and how, with the spirit, with the right kind of effort, we can overcome those challenges. And these are the important things we need to experience. We call these opportunities for us to grow, to learn and to grow, right? So this I call Dhamma yatra, the journey of discovery. Discovering what? Discovering the Dhamma. Yeah? And this makes a pilgrimage a pilgrimage. Okay, so I hope that is clear on the purpose of going. And when we come back, we are a totally different person. Not externally, but something inside has changed. You know, it's like externally come back still more or less the same. Only 2 weeks there. But something inside clicked, and something inside has matured, and there is this settledness in us, very settled, very calmly, very aware of Dhamma. These are the positive things that can emerge from undertaking a Dhamma yatra. All right? So I've seen a lot of people coming back not gaining much because it wasn't very well thought about before they went. Yeah, and they say, oh, I've been to India, nothing. I said, nothing. Yeah. If I go Hong Kong, something. If I go India, nothing. No shopping, no nice food, no. Because the mind is not tuned to Dhamma. The mind is habitually driven by food, comfort, pleasure, entertainment, funny or not funny, convenient or not convenient. This is how the mind is usually tuned to. But if the mind is tuned to Dhamma, I promise, I guarantee, this is going to happen. Something will click. If the mind is not tuned to Dhamma, nothing clicks. So in order for us to go to India, we don't need much. You need passport, visa, money. That's all. Just go. But what you get out of India, that is the question. Anyone can go to India. Anyone can go to Bodh Gaya. What you get out of going, that is the key. Right? So this is the difference, the Dhamma yatra. So today probably I can share with everyone my own experience of going to India. And although many times going there, I've been to my mother and Yu Tong and so many other Malaysians have been. Every time they come back, they will always remember. My mother was telling me yesterday of all the trips she has undertaken, around the region and to Europe. The best was to India, because although it was full of inconveniences, a lot of discomfort, but then she learned the most. She experienced the most. It was the most touching and inspiring trip. Not the most convenient, but the most inspiring. So she was just sharing with me yesterday. So I encourage every one of you who haven't gone on the Hajj, haven't gone on this Dhamma yatra, to at least experience, form your Kalyana Mitras to go together. And don't tune your mind to material comfort. Tune it to the Dhamma. Okay? So if you have any questions, practical questions also, you may ask. You may share. Yeah. The documentary was the result of a trip we went in 2012. And 2012, some people who were doing research about Xuan Zhang followed us. I allowed them to tag along, 6 of them to tag along on the trip. And when they came back, they discovered, it's a lady that said, I've been to India 5 times prior on pilgrimage. She was very privileged. She had been there 5 times prior with many monks. But not once she understood things as clearly as that trip. So she proposed that we document the whole journey of Dhamma yatra. And this is where I was asked to go again reluctantly to to be filmed, leading the tour and so on, with the condition that I shall never be broadcast. So they say it's quite tough to film you and not broadcast you. Then what are we to show? And I say, show the Dhamma. How can you show the Dhamma? Through the narration. So the narration will take a long time because you have to write the whole script and so on. So it will take another 9 months to a year for us to come up with a documentary. And after which to come up with other shorter documentaries and other books as well. So the books will come out probably in 2017, 2018. There'll be a series of them as a result of this trip. Okay? Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Brother Yutong, for sharing. I got a historical question. I read sometime back there's some archaeologists was doubting the year of birth of the Buddha, 600 years, and there's some controversy over that. So my question is that, is this a question of historical exactitude, or has it got to do with how Dhamma might be affected by when he was born? Just a historical question.
Yeah, historical question, but still important, because many people thought if the Buddha were born earlier or later, it might affect a lot of developments. But in actual fact, if we study history, some historians were proposing that the Buddha was born in the 5th century. Some proposing that the Buddha was born in the 6th century. And the Theravadians proposed that the Buddha was born in the early 7th century BC, before. So the accepted year for Buddhists, which we calculate our Buddhist calendar from, is now 623 before Christ. But that is highly improbable. how do we calculate the birth year of the Buddha? We can collaborate with the reign years of Indian Maharajas, Indian kings. Yeah? And if we can ascertain the reign year of one Indian king, and then they usually would say this is how many years after the Buddha, because they were mostly Buddhists by that time. Then we can ascertain the roughly which period the Buddha was born. If we study further in history, the time, the period where the Buddha was born, would it affect the Dhamma as we know today then? My answer is no. It will not affect the Dhamma. No. Why? Because the Dhamma is beyond time. The Dhamma is not tied to a particular political system, not tied to an economic period, not tied to a particular social order. The Dhamma is in that respect very universal. It is applicable here in modern day Singapore and Malaysia as the Buddha's time in India. So it is akaliko. So it doesn't affect the Dhamma at all. In fact, our Buddha was not even the first Buddha. You know, in his what you call beyond history, there were 4 other Buddhas, 3 other Buddhas before Gautama. Yeah, Kakusanda, Konagamana, and Kassapa Buddha. And what did the Buddha teach? The same 4 Noble Truths, Noble Eightfold Path, and the 12 links of Paticcasamuppada. It's the same essential education because their realization is the same. So whoever Buddha that came before Gautama and whoever that would come after Gautama, they would realize the same Dhamma. So it makes no sense when some Buddhists say, oh, I will be reborn in a fortunate period to hear the Dhamma from Maitreya. So when I ask them, so what's the Dhamma Maitreya going to teach? Oh, 4 Noble Truths, 8 Noble Paths. So what's the difference between that Dhamma and today's Gautama's Dhamma? Then they say, Silo bo xiang liao. Completely the same. So I say, why wait? Time and tide waits for no man or women. So therefore, we must not wait. Yeah? So Dhamma is the same. Yeah, Doctor.
Brother Dan, yeah, happy to see you again.
Yes.
I want to ask that, if you read from the Buddha teaching and the story, I always say that the Buddha was born in India, and the future Buddha will be born also in India. So, if I can ask, what are the specific place that all the Buddha will be born in India? And maybe my second one, how do we compare these places in India with Borobudur in Indonesia? Is there any specific value for visiting Borobudur also? Thank you.
Thank you. When you go to India, they will tell you very proudly that all Buddhas will be reborn in India. But the Nepalis disagree. They say all Buddhas will be born from now on in Nepal. Yeah, but those days there were no Nepal. Who created Nepal? The British. At that time there was no India. Who created India? The British. Just like who created Singapore? British. Malaysia also British. Yeah. Thanks to the British, they even gave us the name Bodh Gaya. Earlier there was no Bodh Gaya. Thanks to Stamford Raffles, he gave us the name Borobudur. That was given by Raffles. Original name lost. But thanks to the British also, thanks to Alexander Cunningham, they excavated and found a lot of all these ruins of temples. Earlier they didn't know these were Buddhists. They thought, well, maybe Hindu and so on. But when the British discovered images of Buddha and inscriptions, and once they deciphered the inscription, then the history of India starts on a new chapter. It was revealed then that the history of India was half of the time Buddhist, until it was lost. Nobody knew that. You see? So this is very interesting. Now, all Buddhas born in India. Now, in India, a lot of legends are there. They don't place so much importance on history and facts, but on myths, mythologies, and legends. So this is a belief that Indians have, and this has actually came in to the mainstream Buddhist thinking also. So we now also, many Buddhists believe that Buddhas are always born in India. But the text which this is based on is actually a later text. You know, the Buddha himself did not mention that all Buddhas will be born in India, right? But he did mention a few Buddhas that were born before him in and around the places he was. So that gave us maybe the impression that all the Buddhas were born in India. The second question is Borobudur. How does that relate to Borobudur? In the pictures that Brother Yutong showed earlier, there was the biggest stupa in the world, that is Kesia Stupa. And that Kesia Stupa is very special because around that stupa there were two important occasions. One occasion was when the Buddha preached Kalama Sutta, the very famous Kalama Sutta, the discourse to the Kalamas. Yeah, we can find that in Anguttara Nikaya number 3. The other famous incident that happened there was the Buddha on the final journey from Visali to his final resting place, Kusinara. He passed by that village of the Kalamas. And it was there that he turned back the Lichavis. The Lichavis were the people of Vesali. They had traveled with him 60 kilometers to the border already. That was the border town. And then at Padang Besar or Woodlands, you know, the Buddha turned back and said, okay, Singapore lang peng ke liao. All you Singapore, go back to work. Tomorrow is Monday. He crossed the border, but in order to give them the comfort, the Buddha presented his own alms bowl to the Lichavis. And there they made that big stupa to commemorate that occasion. The bowl itself was not put inside the stupa. It was too precious. The occasion, the place, they commemorate with that biggest Buddhist stupa in the world. And the bowl they brought back to Vaishali. But it was lost after the invasion. Yeah? So, Borobudur was modeled after that Kesia Stupa. Borobudur was big. In the Kesia Stupa also, the mandala is in the form of the mandala, although round mandala. The base is lotus-shaped. And there are Buddha images facing every direction. So this is how Borobudur was inspired and constructed completed in the year 830 by the king Samaratunga. Yeah? By the king, Malay king, a Buddhist Malay king, Samaratunga in Java. So this Borobudur was left undestroyed, whereas most of the monuments in India were destroyed. You know? And as Yutong also mentioned, some of the stupas, because they are made of bricks, subsequent kings didn't know the significance of these stupas. They don't care anyway. So they just took these bricks to build bridges, markets, and people from the village also took and built their barns, their houses, and so on. So systematically, they have been dismantled over 1,000 years. So if you don't go now, then probably there's very little that we can see of India that has not changed for 3,000 years. If you go to rural India in Bihar and many places in Uttar Pradesh, things have remained more or less the same. The lifestyle, even the landscape has remained more or less the same. But now with an addition, even the poorest village, people all take out their cell phones. Everyone has a cell phone now. So even the poorest village, they have cell phone connections. So this is amazing India. We call it incredible India. Yeah. Any questions or comments? How many people have been to pilgrimage in India? How many people aspire to go? Yes. Yes, in the last sutta, in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, in the Tigha Nikaya number 16, you can go back and read this sutta. The Buddha mentioned to Ananda, he said, in future, any monk, nun, layman or laywoman were to visit these places that are associated with the Tathagata, they may gain in them some inspiration and what you call some insights. And it was later added that if they are born, if they die on the pilgrimage, then they will be born in a fortunate realm as well. So this is added on later to give the, what you call the oomph. So please don't go and die there. Yeah. This was added later, yeah? So there's no guarantee. Yeah. So it was mentioned in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. And you can experience the joy. When you read about it, what's so special? But if you go with a special group, then it becomes very significant. And then when you reread all these suttas after you have been to those places where the Buddha preached, it gives you a very fresh insight into things. You know? Buddha talked about horse carts, bullock carts, grass cutters, creepers, sal trees, rivers, you know, a lot of rural settings. The Buddha mentioned in the sutras. In a modern context like Singapore, Malaysia, we cannot imagine, so it doesn't resonate with us. Once you go there, and if you remember those texts, you can say, wow, sui, gu chia lin, new lun. You can see how it turns and so on. And it's very special. That's why we have to prepare before we go. We cannot go there and not know all these things. It's good to know enough, right? So read up on the suttas and so on and make aspiration to go there in order for us to get inspired. When we go there, it's not about getting knowledge, it's about getting insight already. So the knowledge we could have gotten here, but the insight, probably we need the inspiration, the touch of the place. Yeah.
Yes, so as Brother Tan say, the purpose of the course is also to read up some of the sutta also as well, so that when we go there, when we mention about the Digha Nikaya number 16 Mahaparinibbana Sutta, we know what is the content, what was being taught there, so that we don't have to explain what was said in this. And Brother Tan can spend more time in explaining the meanings on the spot, and then we can find more time for inspiration rather than time for understanding. Okay. So, any more questions, brother, sister? So it looks like all of you are very inspired to go. Oh.
Thank you, brother, for your sharing. Can you please also share about your experience of leading I don't know whether is it a pilgrimage or a tour to the Buddhist ruins at Bujan Valley in Kedah? Yeah, thank you.
We do not organize very frequent trips there, but if there are special groups like last April when the Buddhist Fellowship went to Kedah, to Bujang Valley for a special visit, I would be very happy to explain. But I don't organize trips there because in Malaysia now is very sensitive. Anything that is pre-Malacca, and especially when they discover things they don't want to discover, they are very sensitive about it. So we are very low key. We don't advertise, we don't organize, but we go. So we go, I just dropped by. We just dropped by. So they were amazed. In August, there are about 7,000 people go there to visit the archaeological site. And every month they increase. So last week I was also there. 2 weeks ago I was there. CCTV from China had come to film the place, and also again reluctantly I was roped in to explain the significance of the place. And last year it was the Discovery Channel and the history. But the biggest catch of all will be National Geographic. And they might come in 2017. Yeah. So this is Bujang Valley, and it's very, very important place for the spread of Buddhism throughout Southeast Asia. Yeah. So this is in Kedah, very near. It also pushes the history of maritime Southeast Asia, Malaya and Singapore, back by 1,000 years. With the discovery of such ruins, everything's pushed back by 1,000 years. So this is a very significant length of time in history, 1,000 years. Yeah? Okay. Any questions on pilgrimage or things?
Okay, Brother Tan, thanks for informative sharing. It just occurred to me that Palembang at that time was a significant place, and was that the name at that time, or it was later on? Palembang.
Yeah, Palembang is the modern name. Chinese we call it Jugang. Jugang. Why Jugang? Ju means huge. Gang means harbor or port. It's a huge port. And this is corroborated with evidence that the wharfs, just like Pasir Panjang, it's 15 kilometers long along the Musi River. So Palembang was a very important entrepot for the India-China trade. So the ships from Guangzhou and Quanzhou and Fujian would come directly to Palembang and then change ships and then transship to India, various parts of India, and later to even Persia, Arabia, and from the Middle East to Europe, to Venice, to Rome, to Paris, and to London. So this was a very important node in the East-West trade. In the past, it wasn't called Palembang. Yeah? The Chinese, for example, Yi Jing, who came to Palembang in the year 672 from Guangzhou, and again in 686, the second time, he called it Boga. Boga. That place was called Boga. And the name, the kingdom, was called Sri Vijaya. It was from the Chinese that we knew there is such a place called Sri Vijaya. And the Europeans only found out about Sri Vijaya about 100 years ago. When they finally confirmed in 1918 there was a kingdom, Buddhist kingdom, an empire called Sri Vijaya. Only in 1918. Yeah. So very interesting. We are still discovering the history of Southeast Asia, Malaya, and Indonesia. So there are lots of Buddhist places in Southeast Asia. Mainly the remains are found on the island of Java because of the material they use. They use lava stone. And stones can last for 1,000 years, probably even longer. But in Malaya, we use laterite bricks, which can last about 500 years if they are very well baked. But for a 2,000-year ruin, chances are very slim that they are preserved in good condition. In Palembang and other places of Malaya, we use wood, which hardly lasts 300 years. So we don't have ruins left, only the base. But the top, we use wood and atap. So all those have long disappeared, decayed. But in Java, the whole thing is made of lava stone because it's plenty there, and you can still see hundreds of Buddhist shrines and Hindu shrines in Java. Very inspiring. So I think with that, I'd like to again, there's one more. Yeah.
just to maybe to add what you say, when you speak about the Buddhist country, I'm talking about the Asia here. So there is Majapahit, that is where the Borobudur is. And you mentioned about Sriwijaya, actually that went even bigger, but it's within Southeast Asia. Not only Indonesia, but I think Malaysia also covered there. I like to add something which still exists here. We call it, in Bali, they call it Hindu. But I have a close friend. Seems to be the teaching, I mean, his knowledge is quite crossing with the Buddhism. But why you are saying you're Hindu? Yeah, we're Hindu Buddha, they say. He is from Bali. I mean, not like me. He's more the origin, the aborigine. So what do you think about he's saying very strongly Hindu Buddha, he say. So I don't know any connection with what you know about this.
Yeah, just a brief one. I want to condense 1,000 years into 2 minutes. The Borobudur, as well as many of those Buddhist ruins which we see in Java and also in Sumatra, were actually built during the Sriwijaya period. And the Sriwijaya period started in the 7th century and lasted up to the 13th century. But after the 11th century, the last 200 years, they were actually overshadowed by Javanese kingdoms. In the year 850, the Javanese threw out the Sumatrans from Tanah Jawa, and Javanese became the lords of Java Island. It was a very significant development in the history of Indonesia. And from there, they have the kingdoms of Airlangga, and from there, Singhosari and Kediri. Then only came Majapahit. So the Majapahit didn't build Borobudur and many of those things. Majapahit were nominally Hindu. But in the case of Java and later Bali, we have to understand when they say they are Hindu, they go to Buddhist temples and worship, because from the 8th century onwards, Buddha was considered one of the avatars of Vishnu. And they say, oh, Buddha, also one of our gods. Buddhism was reabsorbed into Hinduism after the 8th century Reformation in India. So the Hindu kings or the Buddhist kings would go and patronize both Buddhist and Hindu temples. Even the Srivijayans themselves, they were Buddhist, but they built a lot of Hindu temples. So when Majapahit declined and disappeared, the remnants of Majapahit moved from East Java, jumped across the straits to the island of Bali. So from then on, Bali is the custodian of ancient Javanese dual religion and tradition of Hindu Buddha. So if you go to Bali today, when there is a ceremony, very important religious occasion, you always have the Hindu priest and the Buddhist monks to conduct the ceremony together. Usually they will end with the Buddhist monks reading the parita. So the beginning part is very, very interesting. They have pujas, they have gunungan, they have a lot of dance, a lot of offerings, a lot of mantras, all very colorful. But they always end with the Buddhist mantra. So to complete the ceremony, a Buddhist monk must come and read the parita and selesai, sempurna. It's already well done, well done. So the Buddhists always have the last word. So you can do anything. At the beginning, Buddhists always have the last word. And then in Hokkien we say, Peng An, yeah. Peng An. No? So I'd like to thank everyone for your contribution and for your kind attention. I'd like to thank Brother Yutong. I think he was too inspired already going on the trip. So he wants to share this as much as the experience that he had with many more people. So I admire his initiative to do this. I want to say that it is not my idea to organize a pilgrimage for Singaporeans, but Brother Yutong has been very insistent. Every 2 months he would ask me, Brother Tan, can we have the dates? Have we have dates? I say, I don't want to date you. Okay. But I think things can be arranged, yeah. So I will have to see that things can be arranged, yeah. If there is a desire, if there's a strong, what you call religious desire, it is our duty to support. Yeah. Yeah.
Sadhu.